Let's now look at pistols. So here is a pistol, a semi-automatic handgun. And what that means is you just keep pulling the trigger, and every time you pull the trigger, it's going to fire until it runs dry, so you have no more ammunition in it. Here is the magazine. The magazine goes into the grip. Here is the magazine release. That's a pretty typical place. It's where you can put your thumb so that you can release the magazine without having to move your hand very far from where you're holding the grip. The trigger, now this is a Glock. That's a brand name of Glock, which is a popular weapon. And it does not have a safety like the one I showed you. Instead, the safety is in the form of a double trigger. So there are two leaves to this trigger, and one sits out from the other. So if this gets bumped, it should not fire. You actually have to pull the first leaf back to the second one and then pull it the rest of the way for it to fire, which is a natural trigger pull. Let's just go ahead and look at the video so we can see how this operates.
The firearm used as the model, a 1911 semi-auto handgun, will be displayed with only some essential internal parts for the sake of simplicity and clarity. This is an individual unit of ammunition, the cartridge. It is loaded into the magazine, which contains a follower and a spring that keep the cartridges under tension. The magazine is designed so that the cartridges can only be pushed out forwards. The spring cannot push them straight out of the magazine. When pulling the slide back, it cocks the hammer. Upon releasing it, the recoil spring snaps the slide back forwards, which on its way grabs a cartridge and pushes it into the chamber of the barrel. When the trigger is pulled, the hammer drops and strikes the firing pin, pushing it forward. The cartridge consists of a casing, which contains the bullet, the powder, and the primer. When the primer is hit by the firing pin, a chemical reaction inside causes a small explosion, which ignites the powder. The powder burns rapidly, which increases the pressure within the enclosed cartridge dramatically. The resulting force propels the bullet, while equal force also goes in the opposite direction, pushing the slide back, which ejects the spent casing and cycles the next cartridge.
So that's how a pistol operates. So here's how it looks when you have the slide locked back. Now let's talk more about evidence related with pistols in this case. And one of the things is how the pistol ejects the cartridge, the used cartridges. So here we have a little bit of a diagram, and you see this is the side of the weapon. It's a cutaway, X-ray vision, whatever. And this is the magazine in the grip on the right. This is the cartridge that gets pushed up there. Well, during the event when the cartridge fires and the slide goes back, it catches the slide, the mechanism in there catches the edge of one of the cartridge that was just fired and flings it out through the ejection port. And then as this slides back, it drives the new cartridge into place. All right, so what about this one that gets flung out of the ejection port? Where does it go, and what can that help us with? A couple of things. Number one, it's evidence. So if you find cartridge cases lying about at a crime scene, it may indicate that there was a gun used. So the question also is, where are they going to be? On these pistols, typically what happens is the cartridge is ejected backwards, right. You can sometimes have a little conjecture about where the shooter was based on where the cartridges ended up. But you have to be very cautious about that, and I'll mention why in a moment. But let's first look at a video that shows cartridge cases being ejected from a weapon, so you can see that they go to the rear and to the right of the weapon. Slow motion. And there it is as it leaves the ejection port. Okay, that angle is not the best for what I'm trying to describe. So we'll see a second video in a moment, but we see this one twice. Now notice that I should point this out. Notice that the slide is locked back. It's not moving now. That's what happens when all the cartridges are fired. When the magazine is empty, the slide will lock back. And that will then tell you that you have an empty gun. So now let's look at the same type of thing, but from a different angle. It's going to start out with almost the same angle, but here we go. Now we're going to see it from the shooter's point of view. Now you see that? It goes towards the right. One more time, please. Backwards and towards the right. So the idea there is maybe we can look at where the cartridges landed and get an idea of where the shooter was. Well, you got to be really careful with that because first of all, empty cartridge cases are very light and they bounce. If there's a strong wind, they can go off course. Also, first responders are really good at kicking them and putting them in a completely different location than they actually had been. So don't get excited about the location of cartridge cases. A lot of studies have been done to see where they land. It's generally about the same place, but again, they can go all over the place. What may be a little better is to say, I know this is where the shooter was standing. I need to find the cartridge cases. Where should they have gone? Then you start looking to the rear and to the right of where the shooter was standing and facing. Of course, what we're going to do when we find them is document them, take photographs, add it to our notes, put it on our sketch, take measurements. This is where cartridge case item number 12 was located, and so forth. Now, also another thing that affects the cartridges and how they fly is how dirty the gun is. As the gun gets dirtier, the ejection becomes less efficient. Document the identity of the firearm, the position of the safety, was it on or off? If it has one of those safeties like I showed you. The existence of ammunition in the chamber. So when we made it safe, was there a cartridge in the chamber? The type and location of any stains, there's the serial number and stuff. Okay, protect the barrel, putting it in a gun box and making sure that we're protecting it, especially if we believe there's biological evidence on it. We need to document the identity of the cartridge in the chamber. So that one that came out, we put it into a separate envelope and we label it so that we know that's the one that was in the chamber. Now, as far as the magazine goes, you do not unload the magazine. You don't empty the magazine. That's what the criminalist in the firearms unit will do. And then the criminalist will catalog those as they're taken out and send them to prints, send them to DNA as is necessary. Seal the container with evidence tape, write your initials and date across the evidence tape seal.